Hello, people of the world, wherever you may be on this terrestrial plane. I hope this finds you well. I hope that you absorbed and were transformed, or at least affected by the full moon in a positive way. Oddly, actually the last couple of full moons, it's not that I haven't been absorbing the energy of the full moon, but it's just sort of been very integrated into the experience of life. So there wasn't a conscious decision to sit down and observe or interact consciously with the moon energy. It was just sort of, it permeated everything that I was experiencing. So, no complaints there. What I do want to focus the energy on this week is less on the specifics of astrology. I mean, there are some interesting dynamics coming up. But we are basking in the afterglow of the full moon. That usually lasts about 2 weeks. And or at least for the time for us to integrate fully the energies and the lessons of what we are letting go of in preparation for what we're about to open ourselves up to. The focus from here on out, particularly for this Leo season, is self-love. Now, what is self-love? Well, I mean, I could give you a very banal terrestrial 3D definition of self-love. But what we're ultimately wanting to focus on more is authenticity and honesty being at the very basis of that self-love. And the planetary energy of this time is very much geared towards that. And Leo, in general, the energy of Leo, gives us that opportunity to sort of come out of the inner processing and to integrate the new aspects of ourselves, the new, there's little tingly aspects of us, like we can feel them growing. It's like new spiritual limbs growing, so to speak. And we want to allow those transmitters, those chakra points, because they're really like infinite chakra points coming off of us that we can never map because we just don't have the capacity to understand or see or measure those things. So, it's those, and maybe it's a regeneration process rather than them actually being new. Maybe it's just like things that have dulled or been killed off as a result of spiritual or emotional injury or even physical injury, those coming back into a new existence and therefore being infused by the new energetic essence of who we are, if that makes sense. I mean, I know that sounds very, very woo-woo, but it is the truth of who we are. I mean, how can we not be woo-woo about things? I mean, yeah, we have to ground ourselves in order to successfully navigate our journey on the physical plane, but in our personal space, like here, or when we're alone, or with other groups of people who think in an open, spiritually minded way, we can allow ourselves to understand that better, to observe it, to feel it. So that's what this is all about, feeling, and feeling the truth of your feelings, which means having to do, we've hopefully already done a lot of the work of self-examination, but it's acknowledging where we may fail to move beyond the stories that we have told ourselves before about ourselves, the narrative that suited the personality, the persona that we were trying to curate and sell, essentially. Like, from the moment that we're possessed by the 3D matrix system, where we're being conditioned to commit to values that are not authentic to our soul. There is an accumulation of storytelling that pushes us further and further away from who we are, what our essence is. Because we're shamed out of being able to take ownership of those things, because they don't suit other people, they don't fit the narrative, they embarrass our parents, if we're not a certain way. Our teachers are punitive when we express aspects that don't fit into the system, because at the end of the day, the way that we're taught is to fit in. Because, it's not to say that that's not it's an illusory act of love, but the intent of the teacher or the parent is, of course, to guide us into not having to feel the pain of alienation and rejection that comes from not fitting in. But as we know, because we are who we are, and we're on this path, and for whatever reason, where we're at on our spiritual, evolutionary, karmic journey, we chose to come into circumstances that actually allowed us to bypass a lot of that stuff, that even though we were being conditioned, a deeper inner knowingness told us all along that that was bullshit, and that we held on to a part of that authentic essence, regardless of how much conditioning took place. And when we look back on our lives, we can see the chapters where we were most disconnected from our true essence, and what those felt like. I'm sure that if you go back and you're honest with yourself, you can sense that, you can recall that feeling of dissociation. Even if you thought that you were at the peak of your terrestrial prowess, it may have been when you were your most seductive, you were your most sexualized, you were your most powerful in terms of the 3D notion of conquest. There's, you can sense that separateness from godliness, right? When you really go back to it. And it's very confusing, it's very difficult. As I've said before, we live in this entirely pornographied society that has been rendered this way on purpose in order for us to be so distracted from the truth, from the real value of who we are, that we can't most of the time we can't even see just how perverse our approach is, just how we are conditioned into a predatory behavior, where we are conditioned to covet, where we are conditioned to steal. I mean, the bottom line is, we're, from a justice perspective, we have a system that, tells us, oh, you don't steal another person's belongings, you can't shoplift, you can't burglarize, you can't take something that belongs to someone else in the material realm. But there is no, we have to ultimately get to a point where we understand that there's a karmic process at play all the time that represents that same sense of whatever justice it is that I'm sure when our justice systems were initially designed, they were meant to reflect a divine karmic kind of process. But of course, culture is a perversion, and culture is propagandist and serves the agenda of the few. And that's the thing, is that, it's why it's so difficult for us to understand the world that we live in today, with all of this, ridiculous political theater, and the sense that we know everything will crumble, but it's like, when? And how long are we going to have to endure, like, the charade, you know? Because all of those things have been co-opted from an ethical perspective to be as perverse as possible, but they all sit within the parameters of legality. And the thing is that, you know, you can't have... Yes, there are fundamentals of, you know, universal law, but most of the rules that we live within in society have been adapted to serve just a very small faction of power-hungry, low-frequency beings who appear in human form, but who knows where the fuck their energy comes from, because, I mean, it's hard to really understand how that could happen to a person, because it's not just psychology that we're talking about. You know, we try to explain everything away in terms of like sociopathic and psychopathic behavior, but psychology is an invention too. It's just a flawed language to express behaviors that we don't necessarily understand, you know. And while it's easy to stigmatize and label every form of behavior in order to convince everyone that they have a personality disorder or that they're deeply misaligned in some shape or form, but we never talk about it in the sense that what we're, you know, what that is like, you know, a loss of spirit. It's like, you know, we've moved away from source. That's what a lot of mental illness, so to speak, is really all about. You know, it's actually more often than not when we have a deep sense inside of ourselves of just how far off the track the world is around us, and we're struggling to find our way back to source, but we feel the current pulling us in another direction, and that's really the mental strife and struggle. You know, for anybody who's had a nervous breakdown or who has been through extreme anxiety, when you're in that state, you know, there's an awareness that, you know, you go into fight or flight mode. You're in such a primal kind of place that, you know, there is no room for spirit in that moment, because you are just reduced to the essence of your physical body and your brain and your nervous system being out of whack in that very moment. And, you know, but when we're practicing, you know, when we have good spiritual practices of self-care in place, you know, it's much harder for us to fall into those dark areas when we're on our dark night of the soul journey or whatever, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm talking a lot about all this because it does all come back to self-love, because self-care is the first commandment of self-love. And so that's what we're being challenged to face, is where we are not self-honoring, where we are not self-loving, where we are not allowing ourselves to move beyond the limits of vocabulary and judgment that we cast upon each other of, you know, oh, if you love yourself too much, then you're arrogant. If you know, you're not... as long as you're still teachable in your self-love, no matter how that expresses itself, you're on the right path. And that's all you really need to know. So think of that in the coming week, because there will be some moments where you'll be challenged on that. Particularly with Mars in Leo, that's and where Venus is at, and Pluto, you know, same players. But that Aquarius full moon, which will be completed with the second Aquarius full moon in a few weeks from now, is it seems to me that it was the energy guide. It was there to guide us into, as the water bearer carrying the essence of emotion, but in this sort of innovative, collective fashion, that it's pushing our individuality into a place that's more malleable around self-love. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I really do feel as though I can wax poetic about this kind of thing for a very, very long time. And I'm not really sure that we'd be expanding further. It's a conversation to have, but obviously there's only one of me right now, so I'm having a conversation with you, but without your input. So let us instead start pulling a couple of cards. I actually really liked the format of the reading last week, so again, I'm not planning anything, but I think it was a good kind of way of encompassing everything. So I hope that you also experienced the reading last week that way. Oops. Okay, well, that's the one we're getting. I suppose this probably does have a correlation with what we were just talking about, the self-love thing. So, where you are struggling with self-love and self-acceptance, here's the message. Make a change, welcome change into your life. Let's see. And I'm sure that after what we just talked about, whatever that change is, you're going to know, you will have instantly understood what that change is. You already know it. So let's elaborate on that. I'll hold the card up. If the foundation of your life falls apart, do not take it into your heart, for it will harm your spirit and steal your joy away. Be happy. There is no need to suffer over gaining or losing things, for having is bound in time and will always be taken away. Hafiz. Making a change is something we normally do not like because of the fear of the unknown. Hafiz comes to you as an oracle to help you welcome a change in your life. He is guiding you to surrender to what is beyond your control and focus on your own internal transition to a new reality. He wants you not to allow change to weaken your heart and take your joy away. Dear one, a change in direction or a development will move you to realize a future hope or dream. Be assured this change could bring great satisfaction to you. After you have determined precisely what you're dealing with, you can develop coping strategies that are best suited to deal with the circumstances. The oracle wants you to do what you can to generate new ideas and finish what you start. Nothing is meant to stay the same forever. You may need to let go of some things you did not expect. In doing so, you will find that you are propelled towards a different path. Accept the change of starting on a new path, which may turn out to be more suited to you. You never know what possibilities the change might open for you. Mantra, I am willing... No, okay. Apparently I can't read at all today, so let me start again. The mantra is, I am will... Well, that's because it doesn't make any sense. I will remain open to the changes happening in myself. I think we'll just take the am out there. I will remain open to the changes happening in my life. I am determined to give myself time to accept challenges and changes as new possibilities to improve my life. Okay. I hope you got that. I'd say that again, it comes down to an authentic, honest approach to ourselves. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if we change or not to the outside world. I mean, that will keep going, right? It's about understanding that alchemical process, that when we decide to put a different foot forward, that inevitably brings about a different consequence. And if we understand our capacity for mastery, then we also reach a point where we're able to intentionally plan the direction in which we want to shift. Right? So, I'm not really sure that there's a better way of putting that. It just simply is the way that things evolve. And interestingly, we just got from the Sacred Destiny Oracle deck security in reverse. Now, there's not really that much of an emphasis on reversals with the Sacred Destiny Oracle, but instinctively what it tells me is that in this issue of needing to make changes in our lives, that what we are struggling the most with on that journey is our attachment to security, our attachment to what we think keeps us safe. Now that can even be an egoic self-preservation based on how we interact with another person. Maybe we don't allow ourselves to be honest and direct with another person, about our feelings. That can be, in terms of how much we are drawn to another person as much as how much we are affected by them in potentially a negative way, which only we can change, of course. But security in the reverse says to me, and to all of us, that we have to let go of the false attachments, the false sense of security. The thing that, if something holds you back, and you give yourself the excuse to keep holding yourself back on the basis that it is a requirement in order for you to feel secure, that's a strong indication that that is some bullshit that needs to go, and you need to stop lying to yourself about. Because the fact of the matter is, it's not one thing that's going to, make your security unravel and disappear. So think about that, how that manifests in your life right now. Okay. It's a firelit cave that we're looking at. Apparently, now I see that. In ancient times, our forebears took refuge in caves. It was there that they could seek shelter from the weather and be protected from predators and enemies. The cave offered a safe place to prepare food, sleep, heal, and build community. Caves were also the places where sacred spiritual ceremonies occurred, evidenced by cave drawings and altars that have been built along the ledges. Symbolically, caves often represented a secret pathway to the underworld, the divine womb of Mother Earth, and the Sacred Heart. Also, caves can be energy portals for shamans or other spiritual explorers. The sacred landscape wants you to know that you are safe and protected. No matter what is occurring in your life, you are in safe hands. Those in the realm of spirit are watching over you. You can relax and let go. Once you've taken measures to protect yourself and those you love, such as making sure everyone has their seatbelt on in the car, making sure your insurance is paid on time, or replacing the filter on your heating system — I don't know why they would want to put such banal examples in — then let go. If you have been hypervigilant lately, take a break, relax, know that all is well. You can turn it all over to the Creator. And therein lies the message about security in reverse, is that, you have to trust in the divine. You have to let go in order to let newness in. And the only way to do that is to have faith. And security is faith. Faith is security, should I say. And it infuses everything of our experience when we allow it in. When we play God in our own lives, and we think that we alone can affect the outcome, and so we desperately hold on to the controls, trying to convince ourselves somehow that we are fully in charge of our lives through our own mechanisms as opposed to surrendering to spirit. The pathway becomes very, very narrow, everything becomes very reduced. That cave becomes so tiny that you might not even be able to fit in it. So think about that if you feel restricted in any way. And I'm sure you do. Who doesn't? Right? Okay. And our spirit animal oracle card of the week is Squirrel Spirit, number 57. Believe in yourself. It all fits in, right? Where is it? Okay. Let's read this one, and then we shall pull some Osho cards and a couple of tarot cards, I think. That should give us a picture of the week to come. You have accumulated wisdom and experience and are surrounded by all you need. An abundance of resources is available to you through the generosity of spirit and all your hard work. Squirrel Spirit shows up when you need reminding that the acorns you have gathered and stowed away have enormous potential to grow. So relax into knowing there is always enough and you have what it takes to co-create the reality you want to experience. You see, this is actually expanding on what I was just saying, giving us, filling in the voids where I didn't, which is that it's a co-creation process with spirit. You're not in charge, and spirit, of course, is always in charge because destiny will happen no matter what. The universe is always expanding and shifting and evolving, but you can co-create with the universe and spirit, and that's what life is, essentially. The essence of life. Right, there was something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, it's about the acorns, storing them away. That's also like the issue of security, is that very often we tend to hoard. We tend to think that we're accumulating weapons to protect ourselves, food to nurture ourselves, whatever it may be that we hold on to, that we feel the need to be so secure in, and again, it restricts us because then we're like, oh, I've got to do this in order to maintain this, and how will I do this, and blah, 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 and it all becomes very, restrictive, So this is, basically saying, those acorns are meant to grow, so you have to plant them, and you have to kind of let them happen while you're getting on with other things and starting new possibilities in other ways. It's just an endless process that as long as you're here, eating, moving, thinking, creating, and experiencing, you are here for the newness of all that, not to repeat or to become so grounded in security that you stop evolving and that you stop having new experiences. Through diligent preparation, you have gained wisdom and strength. How much potential you have. Believe in yourself, for spirit believes in you and wants you to know that you have enough and are enough. Doesn't that truth make you feel safe and secure? It should, for you have everything you need right now. And that's exactly it, right? It's it's that faith. It is that faith. And if you struggle with that, all you need is to do some meditative work, to sit with yourself and allow yourself that experience and of letting go. And you will be infused with the energy of spirit to understand that you're in that divine protection and flow all the time if you surrender to it and you allow it to happen. Okay, here's the protection message if you're struggling with that. Because we all do. We all get stuck. We all, especially in this material world, because everything about our experience conditions us to think that we need to conform and anchor ourselves. Just the idea of the way that the system's set up for buying property, and that's such a intensely important thing in the matrix for everyone. If you buy property, then you know that you're safe. And it's like, well, not really, because there's acts of nature, there's potential that the value of your home that you base everything about your life on will be eradicated by some market crash or whatever. It's all artificially manipulated. And so it's like your roof could literally be blown off, or society itself can just shift so much that the value of what you have becomes nothing. And perhaps ruinous in some cases, especially with the way that people take out mortgages and don't actually pay anything other than the interest on. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But these are the ideas of just how anchored we can become in something, and then that actually prevents us from ever shifting. Or, not that you need to not be a property owner in order to have the freedom to evolve, but I'm just saying that the priorities don't really lend themselves to expansiveness. They lead to contraction most of the time, right? The unpredictability of life can shake your confidence in yourself and your potential for handling the challenges that come your way. Does the thought of not having enough or being enough make you squirrely? Have you forgotten all your strengths, wisdom, and resources? You have come so far on your wits and creativity, making use of all your potential and all that Spirit presents you to help you through life's trying times. It's time to look back on your life and remember how your needs have always been met for the highest good, even in your most challenging times. Life loves you, and so many treasures are hidden in plain sight, ready to be revealed when you most need them. So relax. Squirrel Spirit wants you to know that you are poised and ready for whatever is coming next. So trust in yourself and trust that Spirit has your back. Yup. It's hard to really know exactly. It's a very individuated process, how these energies could affect us. And, where I might struggle with self-love is probably entirely different than where you might, because it's going to be based on my origin story, your origin story, the evolutionary process that took place in your life. Hold on, I have to focus for a second. Spirit, 3 cards for the upcoming week, please. Show us the arc of the energies to come. It's not out there. That's going in as a clarifier. Okay. Oh, I can see what this is all about just from these Osho decks. Yeah, they're just saying that. No, those 3 are the 3. Okay, great. So let's take a look at these, and then we'll take some Rider-Waite tarot cards to clarify them. So we got 7 of Pentacles, 7 of Rainbows, Patience. It's very interesting to see the lunar cycle there, to understand with this very fertile, pregnant woman experiencing that process, because it is essentially like, it conjures up immediately the idea of a pregnancy. And while I may be male and don't have any clue what pregnancy is like to physically experience. I've had parallel experiences in life where I've planted a seed and had to watch it grow. You want to get to the nitty-gritty of the outcome, and subsequently you fail to enjoy the journey. And I'm sure that's probably the case for some women in pregnancy. Some women love being pregnant. In fact, I've met women who love it so much that, it's almost that they like being pregnant more than they actually like having children. And which I can understand, because one brings an enormous amount of attention to the mother, and the other forces all of the attention onto the child, right? So it's an interesting dynamic to look at from that perspective. But, all of it is integrative. All of it, this is the process from conception to birth and death, eventually, and it's the cycle. So patience is basically being in observation of the growth process from the seeds or the acorns that we've planted, and continuing to be inspired and to grow in life's multiple offerings as those seeds grow. You don't plant the seed, stop, and then wait for it to come to fruition. That's what I'm basically saying. We get the rebel at the heart of our reading. I don't remember which card that is. It's a major arcana, I think. And we have conditioning, another major arcana. So I guess we better read those messages and then take the clarifiers, because I think was just wise, because they tell a story that I can't tell. Okay, so we'll start with reading about patience. There are times when the only thing to do is to wait. The seed has been planted, the child is growing in the womb, the oyster is coating the grain of sand and making it into a pearl. This card reminds us that now is a time when all that is required is to be simply alert, patient, and waiting. The woman pictured here is just such an attitude. Contented with no trace of anxiety, she is simply allowing. Through all the phases of the moon passing overhead, she remains patient, so in tune with the rhythms of the moon that she has almost become one with it. She knows it is a time to be passive, letting nature take its course, but she is neither sleepy nor indifferent. She knows it is time to be ready for something momentous. It is a time full of mystery, like the hours just before the dawn. It is a time when the only thing to do is to wait. Well, I'm not so sure about it being only time to wait. That's not what patience really is. As I said, patience is to continue on your life journey without expectation of how your seeds planted will turn out, So, sorry, Asha, but let's expand further on that. But maybe in the second part of the message, we'll get a better sense of that. Maybe that's just me projecting that I don't really understand what waiting is. That waiting instantly for me conjures up feelings of impatience and frustration. So, I stand humbled, because it's not like I really know better than Asha, right? Or maybe I do. We have forgotten how to wait. It is almost an abandoned space. It is our great treasure to be able to wait for the right moment. The whole existence waits for the right moment. Even trees know it, when it is time to bring the flowers and when it is time to let go of all the leaves and stand naked against the sky. So it's more about trust. Right? They are still beautiful in that nakedness, waiting for the new foliage with a great trust that the old has gone, and the new will soon be coming, and the new leaves will start growing. We have forgotten to wait. We want everything in a hurry. It is a great loss to humanity. And I'm just coming to me now is the idea of like when we have sickness in us, or when we have, something, I don't know, you have a rash or a zit, or like, I don't know, a canker sore, ulcer, whatever you call it, in your mouth or something like that, and it's like, you may have had at some point in your life, especially on this journey, because you probably had a lot of anxiety at some point or another, deep fear of like the end of what's going on in your body when something isn't right. Like, let's say you have a dry skin patch and it's like, what is wrong with me? I'm falling apart. My immune system is like broken, and but patience tells you with experience that 2 weeks later it'll probably be gone, sometimes 6 weeks later, whatever it is. If you're on a healing path and you are doing what you need to in order to take care of yourself and heal yourself, eventually it becomes nothing more than a memory, maybe with a scar or with like something to remind you of it mentally alone. But your body heals itself, and you on a deeper level that you have an all-knowingness that that's what your body does, that you have the power to heal yourself no matter what. And let's be honest, even in a very Cartesian sense, you are at least going to die trying, right? So patience is another form of faith, in other words. Okay, where am I? We have forgotten to wait. We want everything in a hurry. It is a great loss to humanity. In silence and waiting, something inside you goes on growing. Your authentic being. Oh, see, it all comes full circle. And one day it jumps and becomes a flame, and your whole personality is shattered. You are a new man or woman. And this new man knows what ceremony is. This new man knows life's eternal juices. And I can vouch for that myself. I'm sure you can too. In fact, this very moment, this very process of shifting, that I was talking about with this full moon in Aquarius and, this sort of energetic portal, like, that I will just reiterate right now for you, is coming up this week, if you're interested. You can bring your consciousness closer to 5D through this portal, and I guess if you get to 5D, and what 5D really is like, bursting into another dimension on the physical plane too, then you won't have to worry about it, because you'll just dissipate into the ether and into 3D, and nobody will ever know. But it's probably not what's going to happen. You just never know, but I doubt that very much. So instead, it's about love, self-love. And it is true. The more self-love you practice and integrate, the more you find yourself in that 5D, because it's what you resonate with. It's what you radiate from yourself. It's what emanates from you energetically. And then everything around you is imbued with that. Your ego no longer is triggered by somebody passive-aggressively insulting you, or withholding, or attacking, or whatever it may be, So, and when that happens, that just keeps expanding, and it just becomes a bigger and bigger kind of a snowball effect of beauty and love. So if that's what 5D is, then that starts to sound very accessible, doesn't it? But can you allow yourself to do it, and can you have the patience to allow it to happen? Oh, sorry. And then our last card, which I think, so this is how I'm taking this. Okay, so, oh, I didn't even do the rebel one. Sorry, I'm so ahead of myself. Okay, so this is the requirement of the time, patience, and we will take a clarifier on it. This is the essence of who we are at this time, in this process of embracing what is happening in our lives. So, the rebel, let's see, where is the rebel? What number is that? 4. Wait, I completely... Okay. Yeah, I'll hold it up for you. The powerful and authoritative figure. Yeah, I mean, that isn't this is the emperor in regular tarot. The powerful and authoritative figure in this card is clearly the master of his own destiny. On his shoulder is an emblem of the sun, and the torch he holds in his right hand symbolizes the light of his own hard-won truth. Whether he is wealthy or poor, the rebel is really an emperor because he has broken the chains of society's repressive conditioning and opinions. He has formed himself by embracing all the colors of the rainbow, emerging from the dark and formless roots of his unconscious past and growing wings to fly into the sky. His very way of being is rebellious, not because he is fighting against anybody or anything, but because he has discovered his own true nature and is determined to live in accordance with it. The eagle is his spirit animal and a messenger between earth and sky. The rebel challenges us to be courageous enough to take responsibility for who we are and to live our truth. Again, it's all perfectly interwoven, this message. People are afraid, very much afraid of those who know themselves, right? You know it. It's been a challenge, right? People are so offended by the very idea that you might know yourself better than they know themselves, because it's very threatening to them, because it takes a lot of fucking work and a lot of dark nights of the soul. Right? And most people just want to be asleep, as we've established over the course of the last few years. And even more so during this nightmarish societal meltdown. They have certain powers, a certain aura, and a certain magnetism, a charisma that can take out alive young people from the traditional imprisonment. And that's what we're here to do as light beings, right? Love walkers, light walkers. We bring that essence to whatever situation we encounter. And we stand in our authenticity, mindful of the restrictions of the system in which we live. But we shine, we lead by example, we evolve for all to see. And you can never measure just how much of an influence you have in that way. That's why even though I have very few viewers on my channel, I keep doing it, because the people that I do connect with, I know that this is of value to them and that they're finding something of value in it. And maybe one day it will resonate with many more people. But that's what we're all here to do in our own shape or form, in our own individualistic way, based upon our own uniqueness and our own gifts. And, and I don't tap into a lot of my gifts, and I'm not meaning psychically, I'm meaning creatively, for example. And but this path, finding my spiritual path, finding a voice for myself that can assist in any way, makes all of that just part of a process. It doesn't matter if I no longer judge myself for neglecting one creative aspect of myself, if I am committed to creating with spirit in some shape or form. That's what we're here to do. That is being of service, right? The enlightened man cannot be enslaved. That is the difficulty. And he cannot be imprisoned. Every genius who has known something of the inner is bound to be a little difficult to be absorbed. He is going to be an upsetting force. The masses don't want to be disturbed, even though they may be in misery. They are in misery, but they are accustomed to the misery, and anybody who is not miserable looks like a stranger. The enlightened man is the greatest stranger in the world. He does not seem to belong to anybody. No organization confines him, no community, no society, no nation. And now is a very perfect time, perfect moment to observe that in your understanding of the world around you. I've been paying attention to, for example, even though I don't live in, I have very little to do with facets of European culture. Even when I did live in Europe, I never really embraced these things. But looking at, like, for example, in the United Kingdom, like, people being so upset about losing their final in soccer to, you know, Italy over penalty points, whatever you call that in football. You know, that whole notion that we're reflected as a nation through a collective sport, that nobody actually participates in. It's just, it's like placing all of that power outside of ourselves. It's like, these are ritualistic, I suppose, on some level. It's no different than gladiators or, other forms of perverted empowerment, spiritual empowerment, that becomes about conquest. It's too far into the masculine. It's that idea of belonging. It's like that need to belong to a fan club, to an organization, to a belief system, to a school of thought, to a political party. All of these things, they're all transgressions. They're all reductive. They all limit us endlessly into things that really don't serve us as a life force. So, and of course I can say that to you guys, but if I said that to the vast majority of people, they would take that as arrogance, as insolence, as an awful kind of judgmental, undignified way of approaching the value of collectivity. And, listen to the message of the rebel and you'll soon understand why that's really simply not the case. And if you do adhere to that yourself, then it's also time for you to acknowledge the brainwashing involved in that. Okay, and then the final card of these 3 cards from the Osho Zen Tarot is really, it's about what we need to let go of. And we've had this card many times, and it comes up over and over again because it's the same message. It's this idea. It goes very much as a clarifier to the rebel. Actually, that's kind of why I put it as a clarifier and then thought I would pull another card, but it didn't. I got the message not to do that and just to pull the Rider-Waite cards instead, and they'll give us a better understanding. But it's the conditioning card again. And this speaks basically in parallel to the rebel, and I will read it for us just because why not? I mean, you got time, right? If you don't, put it on pause and come back to it. But it tells us that story of, this is going to remind us, and think of it purely in terms of your spiritual identity versus your physical identity, right? And I'm just going to read the actual practical part, not the description of the card, because we've done that before. Unless you drop your personality, you will not be able to find your individuality. Individuality is given by existence. Personality is imposed by the society. Personality is social convenience. Society cannot tolerate individuality because individuality will not follow like a sheep. Individuality has the quality of the lion. The lion moves alone. We are in Leo season, and you're looking at a very proud, strong, but relatively subdued Leo. The sheep are always in the crowd, hoping that being in the crowd will feel cozy. Being in the crowd feels more protected, secure. Again, remember. Could this be any more clear? The security card in reverse. Believe in yourself. Make a change. I'll keep going. Rebel, rebel, rebel. Patience is just the state of mind on that journey. And that is true too, because being the rebel, you very often don't really receive the rewards in the moment, other than if you are fully embracing the experience of your individuality. And every one of you is born a lion, but the society goes on conditioning you, programming your mind as a sheep. It gives you a personality, a cozy personality, nice, very convenient, and very obedient. Society wants slaves, not people who are absolutely dedicated to freedom. Society wants slaves because of all the vested interests, because all the vested interests want obedience. Exactly. And, we all have to live that, even whether that be on the macro or the micro, From a microcosmic perspective, I grapple with that all the time, just through having a professional life and, not doing something creative for my own fulfillment. I mean, I figured out ways of making what I do more fulfilling for myself, but I always come up against that. And whenever I have an egoic response to something and I feel out of balance, or I feel dissatisfied, it's because I become too reliant on the idea that my identity is given to me through conforming to a system of a corporation, for example, in this case, or an environment, a professional environment, because I'm looking for brownie points when really what I'm there to do is to shine my light. And I was hired to do my job based on what is unique about me. And, and very often, again, I've noticed this, it's happened to me in friendships with people, it's happened to me a lot in romantic relationships, somebody sees my light, somebody sees the potential and, the potential for what they can receive from me being in their life, and then they want to possess it, and they want to extinguish it eventually, because they can't hold on to it. And of course, the reason why that doesn't work is because it goes against the very essence of everything about our journey as human beings, is that we're supposed to be able to, we don't possess other people. We don't harness and anchor another person into not growing beyond a certain point because we want to continue enjoying, because eventually that just becomes another version of the sheep mentality, as the very cliched expression goes, if you love someone, set them free. There's a reason for that. It's not about being selfless and allowing somebody, again, our society has sort of conditioned us into the tragedy of passion play, the idea of people cheating in romantic relationships. Again, all of this based on something that is about possession. I wish I hadn't been conditioned into that idea that relationships were about ownership, because it really messed my experiences of romantic love and sexuality up in my life. So much so that I eventually closed down and didn't allow those things into my life anymore. And that's really, energetically, that's shifting a lot for me as we speak, because the more I focus on coming into the self-love, the more I am understanding of that power in myself, and the understanding that that's something that I can use to create more love. Not to fulfill an egoic need. Anyway, I'll leave it there with those cards. And let's take okay. I'll take three of these to mirror those, and then we'll be done, okay? Just to see what comes out from Spirit. Spirit, can you please offer us 3 informative, beautiful cards that will give us an idea for this journey ahead. Well, it's not good if they just keep flipping. Sometimes. Okay. I do see that. Okay. Nice. Oops. Oh. Okay, well that reflects that back to us, doesn't it? So, okay, so beneath the Seven of Pentacles, Seven of Rainbows, we have the Ten of Wands. So again, careful not to feel burdened, careful not to burden yourself. Allow yourself to, if you feel overwhelmed, that's what patience really is. It's also like, okay, be patient. Put those ones down for a period of time. Take a rest. Indulge yourself. Allow yourself to take in the view. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your body. Enjoy the essence of who you are. It will probably open up new experiences for you in the process of doing that anyway. But rather than being so focused on the goal, which is going to always, always, always make you feel very much in weariness and weariness, just relax a little bit. It's going to happen anyway. You can pick those ones back up when gotten your breath back and you're balanced and able to move forward. Which happens, because beneath that rebel energy, remembering your individuality and how you manifest that outside of personality, that is the essence of fueling this chariot, which moves you forward on your karmic path into great momentum and building and all the experiences that you may be chasing will come to you as a result of what is essentially the synergy of divine masculine and feminine coming together, which can only happen when you're allowing spirit to flow through you, which means being in that state of patience and being present in your life, and focusing on your individuality and what you bring to the table in every situation. Not what other people bring or don't bring and how that affects you. Just focus purely on your value, what you bring. And your value as you see your value, not how other people see your value, right? These are all very simple concepts, but they're hard to put in play. And then beneath conditioning, we have the Hangman. So the Hangman, again, is like the Patience card. I mean, these are very similar, and it's sort of a yin and yang representation of the same thing. This is the journey of creation that comes out of the woman eventually, but is fed through this lunar cycle of energy, and being one in observation and experience and letting go of expectation and just allowing the flow. And the Hangman is a voluntary suspension. The enlightenment is already with this person. They choose to put themselves in this position of observation, self-observation, in order to allow the divine process to happen. It's a voluntary, think of it as somebody decided to go on a retreat, for example, but instead of it being a physical retreat, this is about purifying your focus. Those are the last words I have for you. I just got the message. Purify your focus. So, that is what the change is to make, I guess. However that manifests in your life. On that note, we are at 1 hour and 4 minutes, so I'm sure you're ready to move on into your life. I love you very much. I wish you a fantastic week to come. I wish you many blessings. And, peace out. Namaste.